Hi, welcome to our talk on building high-performing teams. My name is Paul Lipscomb, business owner, CEO of Processio Strategic Services. And I'd love to take a few minutes just to talk about how, as a business owner, as a business leader, you can build high-performing teams in your organization. And as a veteran, I understand the unique challenge that comes from leaving the service to jumping into business and wanting to make sure that we are giving it our all. And a lot of that is making sure that we're surrounding ourselves with the right people. So love to get into this conversation with you and tell you what I have found to work, what I have found works best in my career post-service, in the service, that allows me to build high-performing teams in my organizations. When we talk about high-performing teams, every business owner wants to have a high-performing team. It's something that is a goal that is the obvious answer to how do you grow your business? How do you have the best organization? Well, you have the right people. However, it's extremely difficult to actually put that into practice. If it were easy to do that, every business would be filled with high-performing teams, and there'd be nobody or no businesses to sit here and talk to, quite frankly, about how to find them, because everybody would know exactly what to do and how to do it. So this comes with a lot of figuring out how people work. In order to put together a high-performing team, you have to understand not just people and how they operate, but then also how they communicate. There's a lot that goes into it. So we want to break that down for you, hopefully in a way that you can apply it to your business and your organization. So again, every business wants to consist of high-performing teams. However, very few find the right formula that actually attracts and develops those teams to help make a difference in their culture and productivity. So in this presentation, we're going to discuss how to design your high-performing teams in a way that not only help your company grow, but more importantly, help attract other high-performing individuals to your brand. And that's the big thing, is we want to get to a point, and when we develop this, that other individuals are being attracted to you. You're not always having to go out and find them, that you become an employer of choice for those types of individuals that help you continue to grow. So with this conversation, what can we expect? Well, first, we want to understand what actually drives your business. Every company knows what they do. However, very few understand what actually powers their progress. As a professional who's done a lot of work and helped a lot of companies with strategic planning and developing a strategic plan, it's very important to focus your efforts on those things which are most important. And when we're talking about developing teams, we have to understand what actually is moving our business so that we know how to properly invest in it. We want to talk about defining what a high-performing individual is. In order to have a high-performing team, it's got to be consisted of individuals who are above average. And so we want to talk about what that person would look like for your team potentially. We're talking about how we craft and how we actually build a high-performing team and determine what makes your teams move and how each individual member contributes. And finally, we want to talk about how you can maintain a high-performing team. It's not enough just to build it. It's not enough just to get there. We want to make sure that you know how you can keep it going, how you keep the ball rolling, how you keep the momentum going, how you keep that team functioning well and at a high level. So if I were to ask you the question, what is your business? What would be your response? 9 times out of 10, the response is going to go something along the lines of, oh, I'm a marketing company. Oh, my business, we do professional services. Or, hey, I have a paint business, a painting business. I'm a logistics company. There are all these things and answers that we give. However, most of the time, that doesn't accurately describe what your business is. And this is what I mean. Understanding what your business is will help you determine how to invest in your team. Failing to correctly identify your business can lead to a failure of resourcing your team appropriately. And again, you may say, well, I know what I am. I'm a marketing company. I would argue that your business is actually your people, not your product or service. And this is an issue that we see a lot, especially with our clients that are smaller businesses, is that they are focusing their efforts solely on their product or their service. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and innovate. You shouldn't try and have the best product or services out there. You should, because that's ultimately what's going to set you apart from your competitors. What I'm saying is that your product or service is not what's actually driving growth in your company or in your organization. Your product and service is just what your customers are buying. It's not what drives your business. Your people are your business. The ones who are building the products, the ones who are conducting the services, those are the ones that are driving your business and making sure it's successful. They're the ones who are answering or solving problems. They're the ones who are facing clients and communicating and presenting who you are as a company in those interactions. So we want to make sure that we are investing in our people with the understanding that that is what is actually propelling our business forward. In our team, the philosophy that we usually drive through is all businesses, regardless of your organization, you can be a nonprofit, you can be a for-profit, you can be a government agency. It doesn't really matter. Every organization is a living, breathing, organic thing. And what that means is that your business is your people. And because your business is your people, it's fluid. What your business is today is not what it was a year ago. It's not what will be a year from now. It changes. It changes with the people that come in it. It changes with how those people interact with each other and how they deal with external influences on them. And so taking that mindset of my business is my people, it's fluid. I have to understand as a leader what that business looks like today. Who are my people? What makes them unique? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How can I utilize that to grow my business in the current environment? One of the things that we do, and one of the ways that we can kind of illustrate this a little bit, is through a wheel model. So most businesses and most smaller businesses typically will think of their business this way. The wheel is their organization that's trying to roll forward. It wants to grow. It wants to progress. You have goals you want to achieve. And they think of their product or service as what's supporting that organization, what's driving that growth. And by doing so, they invest primarily in their product or their service or those things that are involved in it, the processes, those types of things. And again, you have to, right? You have to change, you have to refine your processes. You have to do all those things. But what ultimately happens, in our opinion, is that we feel like what actually is driving their business gets underinvested and resources are not prioritized. And so what happens is you might have a great product or service, but you have a terrible culture or you have a lot of problems with your team. And we feel like that's because there's a misallocation of resources, not just time resources and money resources, but investing strategic initiatives with your people, making sure they're goal driven and that they're achieving their goals. All those things that help people grow and develop commitment to a company and drive that business forward lack the resources because our mind is focused on, oh, this is what makes me money. Business has not changed. Profit is still revenue minus expenses, right? It's a very very simple formula. It doesn't matter if it's a ton of revenue, different streams, or if it is complicated expenses. The formula is still revenue minus expenses equals profit. That's how companies make money. That's how companies grow. And so we want to make sure that we are taking an employee-centric view of our business, which looks like this. The product or service is the rubber that's on the road, right? That's what people are seeing. That's what people are buying. That's what people think of often when they think of your business. But the people are actually what's supporting that wheel, that organization, right? If you had a wheel that didn't have spokes, it's probably going to collapse on itself, or it's not going to drive straight. It's not going to roll smoothly along the pavement. It's not going to be able to be sustained for a long distance. But if you have a well-supported organization where you are focusing on your people, you are prioritizing them in a sense of, you are what makes my business go, you are what makes us a business, then we can truly take a look at, okay, let's make sure that we're focusing on the right people, being in the right places, using and utilizing their skill sets appropriately, and then that we are investing in them so that they can make the best products, they can fulfill the service to the highest level. That's what we want to shift to. We want to move from products and services are everything to our people are everything, and we're going to make the best product or service because of that. And ultimately, what I have found is that if you treat your people right, and if you have a high performing team and you invest in that team, you're going to have the best product or service, and you're not really going to have to try, because that workflow and those individuals that comprise that team are going to want to make the best product or service. So we want to focus on resourcing the people, retooling the people that need it, and letting that mindset be a part of what guides our investment decisions. So first and foremost, before we can talk about how to build a high-defining team, a high-performing team, we're going to talk about how to define a high-performing individual, right? When I say that, almost everybody has someone that they've worked with or that is currently working for them that they understand, like, oh, this is the person that goes out there, they build the widget X more than anybody else. They're the most efficient at their job. They are the ones who are the highest producers. And that's not what we mean by high performing. That might be an element of what you define as high performing. However, there's more to it. And if we fail to lock on this, then we can miss a really big point of how we can drive our teams towards future success. An example, in my time in the Army, I was in the infantry. We had an NCO who was, prior to being promoted, he was what you would think of as an ideal soldier. Highest PT score, highest qual range score, never had to worry about him getting a job done. Seemed great. But then he got promoted. And because performing at his job at this level was different than now being responsible for leading people at this level, he became a very toxic NCO. And so that can happen. I see it in business too. You have someone that gets promoted because they're the best at their job. They get thrown into a leadership position. Their team quits, and the leaders are wondering what's the issue here? This person was the best. And it's because our definition of high performing is slanted towards only one area of what makes an employee a great employee. So when we talk about defining a high-performing individual, we want to talk about the whole person. Your employees are not working in a vacuum. They are good at some things. They are not so good at other things. They are natural communicators. Sometimes they need a little bit more work communicating. They have a life outside of work. They have goals. They have aspirations. They have things they want to accomplish in your company. So all these things are important and make up a person. And we can't forget about those things. When we're looking at employees, and particularly trying to identify a high-performing individual, we want to make sure that we are thinking about the whole person. High-performing individuals are great at their jobs, but they're also great team members. So yes, they are good at their jobs. You cannot be considered high-performing if you are slacking behind the standard. They are great at their jobs, but they're also great team members. People want to work with them. They're going to attract others to work with them. High-performing individuals possess a variety of tangible and soft skills. So it's not just the skills that make them able to do X, Y, and Z for their job. They're also going to have those soft skills, right? Those time management skills, the ability to handle stress, the ability to pivot when they need to, flexibility, the ability to work well with others, the ability to engage and disengage in conflict. And so we want to consider all of these things when we're talking about what makes someone high performing. High performing individuals also value team and company success just as much as their own. This is something that can be hard to understand sometimes. You get an employee that is just rolling through, rocking through, and something happens. Right now, somebody's out, they have to cover down, or there's an added element that you need help with, and all of a sudden they don't want to help. It's not my job. Maybe they say, hey, that's not my job description. I was hired to do this. Just get out of my way. Let me do this. And we can sit there and get frustrated. Like, well, you seem like such a great employee. Why now all of a sudden am I getting so much pushback? And it's because at their core, they value their success more than they value the team or the company's success. We always live out those things which we value most. And so if my philosophy and my value is on the team, then yeah, I'm going to help out. I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to sometimes go outside of my lane to be able to provide support for what we're doing. But if I just value my success, I'm going to be tunnel vision. Nope, get out of my way. This is what I'm doing. This is what's going to give me my bonus. That's all I care about. This is what's going to get me promoted. I don't care about anything else. I care about myself. And those people don't make great teammates. They may have their uses, and there may be parts where that is a role you need to fill in a team, but you do not want the whole team comprised of those types of individuals. So we want to make sure that we are thinking about that employee from an entire whole person perspective. We also need to, when defining high-performing individuals, create intentional ideal employee profiles. So when I say an ideal employee, this is what we mean. We know there's no perfect person. So first and foremost, this isn't a perfect employee profile, but we need to think about what an ideal employee is for each role that we have and how that employee's success contributes to the company's success. So for instance, I have an admin assistant I need filled, or I need to create an ideal employee profile for. I'm going to go through and I'm going to think about things like what experience do they need to have, what type of systems they need to use. Now, think about what you see on a job posting, all those skills, and all that's great, all that's necessary. But also, what are some other things I need to think about? What are those things which are most valuable to me? So maybe something that's most valuable to me is that this person's a self-starter. They can take on projects and they can initiate projects without me always having to know. They want to learn me and learn my flow so that when I need help, I'm not always having to ask for it. Sometimes they're jumping on it. That would be someone that would be important to me. So we want to make sure that we're intentional about what's important to us when we're thinking about what is that person or what's the ideal person for that role. Because when we're recruiting for this role, this will come into play. When we're thinking about recruiting, we're talking more about marketing than we are about science here. We're talking more about marketing than we are about a job description. We're trying to find that person that fits that profile, or we're trying to find individuals that match that place and where they live and how we're going to get in front of them. So we need to know who that person is, and we need to know a whole rounded picture of who they are. Ultimately, we measure what we value. We should hold employees accountable to the things and values that are most important to our strategic goals and the culture we want to build. There are 100 things you could put down on a performance evaluation or on a goal sheet, but maybe only 5 of those things actually will help you grow your business or meet a strategic objective. And so we want to zero in on those things that are the most important to us. And then we want to measure and build into that employee profile traits and characteristics that echo what those values are and what those important things are to us. It's really hard to do. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes sitting down and really thinking about this beyond just what can this employee do. When we talk about building this intentional employee profile for a high-performing team, we want to think about who is this person? Not what can they do, not what skills do they bring. Who are they? And by doing so, we'll be able to create a more rounded profile that we can use to target in our recruiting efforts to put the team together. And one thing I will say on this too, not every single person on that team is going to fit that same ideal profile. You might have 4 or 5 profiles within a team. So say, for instance, you have a department, you might have 4 or 5 types of employees or types of profiles that you need filled because those employees support each other. They round each other out. When we're talking about building a team, it's not just, okay, this is who I need, this is the skills they bring, put them together. It's, okay, this person, people who are strong at or a good fit for these profiles maybe just naturally are less organized. So we need other people here in this profile that is more organized. And that's what we're valuing. And that's what we're trying to build around them. We want to build a whole cohesive unit. And so when we're talking about what makes that person high profile or high potential, high performing, what is that ideal profile? We want to make sure that we are including everything about them and that we're being intentional about what we're saying, not just broad and, yep, they show up to work on time. That's going to be very important. But we want to make sure that we're understanding how showing up to work on time helps us get our and meet our strategic objectives. One of the last things when we're talking about what is a high performing individual, a high performing individual is someone that is going to want ownership in their process, can handle being given that ownership, and accepts accountability on their work. When we are looking at building a high performing team, we want to define what is important to us as leaders. So we want to go to our team and we want to say, hey, these are the most important things to us in this role or from this team, from this company. I've hired you to help make sure this gets done or that we are meeting these standards. So we want to hire them, define what's clearly important to us, and then get out of their way. And this is so hard for a lot of leaders because they're not finding the right people, because they're not thinking about people from a whole person perspective, because they are not creating intentional profiles to understand how to target and recruit the right people. They have to babysit. Sometimes they have to micromanage. Sometimes they have to pour more time and energy into their people than they would prefer and don't get to do other things in the business because all this stuff up front hasn't been done. But when you've gone through that, when you say, okay, I'm looking and I'm evaluating people based off of who they are as a whole person, I'm creating those intentional profiles so that I can target the right people and I'll get those people into the seat. We want to be able to just say, I hired you to do the job. Now do the job. I'm going to get out of your way. I'm going to be a resource provider. I'm going to be there to help guide you. I'm going to be there to make sure that you are doing your job, but I'm not going to be there to hold your hand. I'm not going to be there to make sure that you are doing everything that you said you could do. We want to define what's important to us, create the standard, then get out of their way. Employees should not have to guess at what we find important about their job or their performance. They should never wonder, well, am I doing a good job? Or is my boss going to like, or is the company leader going to like if I do this? Everybody should know, here's the destination. Here are the limits. Work within it, but go to work. I'm going to get out of your way. You tell me what I need to do to help you do your job better. We want to create processes that allow team members to have opportunities to take ownership of their role. Allowing freedom to work within the role can inspire creativity, helps build a relationship of trust between team members and leaders, and ultimately is going to create a more committed team member. When team members are committed, they work better. They are more productive. They will work for the good of the team, not just for the good of themselves. They're not going to sit there and just do the bare minimum. And, here's one thing that I always find, company leader will come to me and say, I would love to have that. That's fantastic. But this is what I have. I have a company full of people I have to manage. And my thought is, it's not easy. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it can be a little expensive, but get rid of them. Find the people that you need on your team. Make sure that you are recruiting slow and firing slow, firing fast, recruiting slow. The slogan goes. If somebody isn't matching what you need them to do, or they get in the role and they are not meeting that standard, then okay, they're not a good fit for you. May not necessarily be a bad thing. They just aren't going to work. So you move on, you go and you find the next person. We want to take our times. If you're having one conversation with somebody and hiring them the next day, that's probably not enough time. You probably need to spend more time getting to know them. They need to have more time getting to know you in your organization. So we want to spend that time up front so that when a person gets in that seat, we can get out of the way and let them do their job. It's extremely important. And by doing so, you're going to create better leaders and you're going to create people that are more committed. And high-performing teams are full of committed individuals. High-performing teams are not full of individuals that are flip-flop, they go half at it. No, they are committed to doing the job well, to doing the job to the best of their abilities, and to hit those company and organizational objectives. in the Army, we had these peer evaluations, and the point of the peer evaluation was to make sure we could evaluate the soldier next to us, to our left and our right. And in the infantry, one of the last questions on a peer evaluation, which I felt like was the most important, was, would I go to war with this person? And to me, that was always such a profound and simple question, was regardless of everything else, despite all of the disagreements, despite what they would do on a daily basis, at the end of the day, would I trust this person with my life? Would I go to war with this person? And I think, speaking from a veteran perspective, that is extremely relevant in business. Now, obviously, the question is not would I go to war to this person, but what we want to ask is, do I trust this person? Are they good at their job? Are they a good teammate? If the answer is yes to both of those, then do I trust this person is also probably going to be a yes, because good teammates are responsible, good teammates take care of each other, and they're good at their job. So you know that they're going to do the job well with expertise. So when we're talking about, is this person a high-performing individual that should be on a high-performing team, do I trust this person? That is going to be the most important question you have to answer, because at the end of the day, if you don't trust them, you're going to be micromanaging them. So they're not going to get to experience that ownership over their process. It's going to create a lot more problems. And if the answer is no, then you need to do something to develop trust in that person. Maybe it's they need more training. Maybe you just need to spend some more time with them, or you need to move along for that person. Move them into another area where maybe you might trust them more, or find somebody that's going to come in that you can trust. And again, it's not easy. I'm not saying that flippantly and saying just get rid of somebody and go find somebody. It's not that easy always to find this person. But at the end of the day, if you don't trust them to do their job, if you don't trust them to work towards the better of the group, ultimately at the end of the day, they're not going to last as on a high performing team. And especially if you have other individuals on that team who you do trust, they're going to see that person, and that person's behavior, that person's lack of ability is going to affect them, either going to make them angry, is going to make them frustrated, or potentially is going to drag them down to their level. So we don't want that. If we identify somebody that's not a high performing individual on a team, what can we do to make them? And if that answer is, I just don't think they're going to get there, then we need to move on and we need to find somebody that can. So extremely important. Do I trust this person? So we talked about what makes a high performing individual. Next, it's okay, we've identified the type of individual we want on our team. How do we put that team together? The first thing we want to talk about is to prioritize well-rounded teams. Teams made up of all the same type of individuals will clash and be less efficient. Just think about it. If you have two type A people in a room and you got to say, figure out a solution, there's probably gonna be a lot of yelling, screaming. It just doesn't work. You need people that can handle some give and take. You need people that communicate differently. But most importantly, you need to understand how each team member communicates and learns best. Not every person is going to sit down there, and if you sit there and come very direct at them, is going to get it the same way as the next person. Sometimes people need a little bit more time having something explained to them. Maybe they need to be walked through something. We need to understand we have these individuals, and because we're looking at them as a whole person, they're different. They're different from the person sitting next to them. So we want to make sure that they are well-rounded, that they have a variety of skills, strengths, and weaknesses. And we want to make sure, most importantly, that they're not afraid to fail. Allow them to fail. I know that sounds counterproductive sometimes in business, but failure is not a bad thing. Failure just means that, okay, we tried it this way, it didn't work. There's a reason. Why didn't it work? Is it because there weren't enough skills, that there wasn't enough training? Was it just because maybe it was just a bad idea, and while we thought it would be great, put into practice, it doesn't work the same? So one of the things that we say in our team is that mistakes are opportunities. we're just getting more data on how to make a better decision next time. So allow them to fail. And if you have high performing individuals who are mature and responsible, failure is going to be a learning experience for them. It's not going to be the end of the road. It's not going to crush them. They're going to understand that if you allow me to fail as a business owner, and I know you're not just going to come down my neck and threaten to fire me every time I make a mistake, I'm going to be creative, and creativity in business is everything. That's where you get those groundbreaking ideas, or you create opportunities to improve your processes, to make them better, to make them stronger. So we want to make sure that they're well-rounded teams in our organization. More importantly, we as leaders want to tie individual success into team success. So when we talk about a high-performing individual, we want to acknowledge their success. Most people want someone to say, hey, you did great, or recognize them when they do something well. And that doesn't always mean a bonus. A lot of people like recognition more than they'll take a bonus. Now, nobody's going to say no to money, but ultimately at the end of the day, how your people are incentivized is different. Not everybody prioritizes the same things. And if your solution is just, well, I'm just going to throw a bonus at this, hey, you get more money if I get X, Y, and Z done by this time frame. Most people will work harder, but maybe not the hardest that they could work. So take the time to ask your team, hey, what incentivizes you? What can I do as a business leader to help incentivize you to do something more, or to hit an objective, to hit a goal? You might be surprised to find out what they might say. But more importantly, when we talk about recognizing employees, high-performing employees, we want to recognize them, but we also want to make sure that everybody knows that one individual is not above the team. And so by doing that, we want to foster this idea that, hey, we have individual performers. We want to recognize when they do well so that they continue to increase their productivity. They continue to try harder. But ultimately, at the end of the day, hey, it's the team that's important. And so what are we going to do? We're going to create team incentives, not just individual incentives. And so if we have just as many team incentives as we do individual performance incentives, now all of a sudden the team success is going to be important to them, right? Like, yeah, hey, I can make X amount of dollars if I hit my objective, but if our team hits, now I get that, plus I get more. It's just providing more opportunity for them to focus on the team. It's providing more opportunity for them to be incentivized for behavior that reflects a team-oriented approach. And then you as a leader with these individual teams, or with these high-performing teams, need to become a resource and servant-driven leader instead of a manager. And again, it's hard. One of the things as a business owner that becomes the hardest is giving it up to somebody else, because nobody's going to do it the way that I do it. That's just a fact of life. Nobody is going to do my business the way that I do it. Nobody's going to do it as well as I do it. I know it better than anybody else. It's mine. It's my baby, my creation. Being able to trust somebody else to do it is hard. However, if we are talking about producing growth from our teams, then what we're talking about is allowing them to become extensions of us as leaders. So when we're putting together a high-performing team, we want to make sure that we are providing resources to them. If we're turning around and saying, hey, you have ownership over this. I hired you to do a job. Here's the limits. I need you to do the job in these, in these boundaries, but go at it. You can decide how to do it. You can decide the best way to do it. If there's a problem, you can fix it. You don't always have to come ask to fix something. You give them a wheel or a scope of responsibility, allow them to work in it. Now, all of a sudden we say, okay, here I am. I've positioned you to demonstrate who you are. I've positioned you as a member of this team to shine. How can I help you? What can I help you do? What can I give you? What resources do you need to be able to do that? And by doing so, you are showing yourself to say, I care about you as an individual. I care about the team. I'm not here to make you do it my way. And so by doing that, you're fostering trust. You're helping to build that ability to want to do more for you, to not always have to ask someone to do something or to beg people to do something. If they feel like that you are a resource leader, they're going to want to help you out. They're going to want, when you say, hey, I really need this done. I know we've been working on this all week, but we had a pivot. We need this done now. That's a new priority. They're gonna be like, all right, yeah, yes, boss, let's go. What do we need to do? Because you've supported them and you're allowing them to have ownership in that process. They're going to be a lot more committed to that relationship with you as a leader. So we've talked about what makes a high performing individual. Now we've talked about, okay, how do we put together a high performing team? Now you have the team together. So now we need to talk about, how do we maintain a high performing team? First and foremost, we want to keep teams accountable. Great teams welcome accountability. Accountability is not a bad thing. Every employee, every team member should want accountability. They should want you to make sure they are doing their job. Now, that doesn't mean that you're hovering over them. It doesn't mean you're micromanaging them. It's basically saying, here are my standards. Here are the goals I'm setting for you as your leader. I'm now going to make sure that you are accomplishing those goals, that you're hitting those standards. And most people, mature, high-performing, well-rounded individuals, welcome that accountability. They don't want to just be left on their own. They want to know that there's somebody there that's helping align them. And if they get distracted and move in another direction, help them to refocus them. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's going to help them hit those targets and get those incentives better than if they're just kind of left to their own. But more importantly, accountability fosters trust in both directions. Trust is extremely important. Like I said, what's the one question we want to answer about somebody? Do I trust them? They're going to answer that question about you. Do I trust them as my leader? And if we have accountability, we give them ownership to do the job within their skills, then they are going to be able to better understand what you're expecting, be more incentivized to go after it and get it done on their own without always having to need someone to hold their hand. And ultimately, accountability is critical to ensuring that teams who are given ownership of their work remain successful. People are human. Stuff happens. People get distracted. Life comes in. People get affected by stuff that's happening around them. So the accountability is that, hey, I'm giving you the ownership to do it. The ability for me to trust you is going to be because I'm going to be holding you accountable to it. So we want to keep teams accountable, but we also want to develop tools to help evaluate team members. By developing tools, we can develop a deeper understanding of what makes a team member successful. Because right now you have your ideal employee profile, but you might get into it and something changes and that profile isn't the same. Maybe something has changed on that profile. Maybe what you thought you needed, you got into it and really realized you needed something else. So creating a tool to evaluate our team members is going to help us a lot. And I'm not talking about your typical performance evaluation, right? So yes, you have to have a way to have a performance evaluation for things like pay changes, promotions, those types of things. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is an active tool you can use on a regular basis to monitor and evaluate your team. Right? Most of these tools will allow us to identify people that are worth investing in, that deserve or warrant more time from us and aren't just based off of productivity. All right. We don't want to promote just based off of productivity. We want to use this tool to know, okay, me promoting someone or me giving a raise to someone is actually me as a business saying, I want to invest more into you as a team member. So I need to have a tool that helps me understand, okay, if I'm going to promote them, okay, they're great at their job, but what am I using to determine from an objective standpoint that they're good team members? What am I using to determine that they are role models? Are there people who other people would want to follow when we're about to put them into a leadership position? What training do they have over soft skills? Sometimes we need to provide training that covers job and soft skills and intentionally design a program that requires your team to demonstrate these skills, right? I see it all the time. Someone gets promoted into a leadership position. Leading people is a very different skill set than doing their job. And they're given no support, they're given no training. We as business owners should know exactly what this person has been taught to do. Now, not always what they are doing on a regular basis, but what they have been taught or trained to do now that they're leaders. We have to be intentional about that. And we want to see them demonstrate those skills to us. In doing this, we can create tools that help to identify investment needs for our teams and our team members. You might have an employee that you trust them. They are there, they're responsible. They're just not very good at a certain part of their job. And so by categorizing them and say, okay, they're worth investing in. How do I need to invest in them? Okay, well, I need to train them better in this area, or they need to be given more opportunity to be given chances to lead, or maybe they have great ideas. I want to make sure that I'm including them in my brainstorming process when we're talking about something new. And so it allows us, by creating a tool or using tools, and there are tools that are out there that help you do this. You have to figure out what works best for you. But ultimately, when we talk about creating a tool for a high-performing team, we're going to look at these individuals. Usually I say at the minimum on a quarterly basis. It's okay, where are they at? Where are they progressing in the course of that year with us? Everybody should be growing. The expectation should be that everybody is growing. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we are monitoring that so that we can invest in them more. So two of my favorite quotes come from the 96, the 90s Bulls teams. Everybody wants to be the 90s Bulls, right? Like that's kind of the epitome of a high achieving, high potential, high performing team. And all of these principles that I've talked about today, I think truly do apply to that. Michael Jordan famously says, talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. If you are trying to build your team, your organization, solely off of who is the most productive, then you're going to have issues. You're not going to have teams. It's going to be very difficult to build a team around people who are always chasing individual productivity. Phil Jackson goes on to say, the strength of a team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. That's the type of mentality we want to foster, is that I am only as good as the person next to me. Well, I may be very good at my job. For our team to succeed, I have to be supportive, and that person next to me has to be just as good as me. And so we want to create that mentality of the team is above the individual, and ultimately individual performance will only take us so far. And not to limit and say you're not going to try and help individual people who are performing great find opportunities to grow and be rewarded. We're going to, but ultimately at the end of the day, your company is full, your organization is full of teams of individuals. And so we need those teams to grow, develop, and ultimately be the ones that are difference makers in what we're doing. So just to wrap up kind of what we've talked about a little bit today, we want to align resources with our team. We need to refocus what our perception is about what drives our business and pour into our people. Again, remember the wheel. If we are focused primarily on our product and service, our people are probably going to be underutilized and under-resourced. However, if we are focusing on our business is our people, my first priority is to invest in them. Then we're going to create teams of people that give you the best product or best service. We want to create teams of individuals that value team success. Incentivize both individual and team performance. Don't just put a individual reward or bonus on the table. Talk about a company. If a company hits a certain goal or a strategic objective, people are going to get rewarded for that. Communicate what your company goals are. One of the simplest things you can do is tell the employee, here are our strategic goals for the year. We're trying to hit X amount of dollars. We're trying to create so many new processes. Tell them, be transparent about your goals, and then be transparent about the progress along the way. Be intentional about what a successful employee looks like. Make sure that you tell them, this is what I expect of you. Sit down when they come on board and say, you're joining this team. Here's what I expect of you. Here's what that looks like in your role. And then say, I'm going to hold you accountable to that. And then you're going to create a way to hold them accountable throughout that your leadership process. Make sure that we are saying, hey, this is what to expect. This is how I'm going to hold you accountable. And then get out of their way and let them do their job. Finally, we have to develop trust as a leader in your teams. Hire people that fit your high-performing team and get out of their way so they can do their job. It's not easy. In order to get out of your way, there might be some tooling, some training, some things that go along with that process, but it's extremely important that we can do that and that we can be resource-driven leaders and not micromanagers, because ultimately my team that's micromanaged is not high performing. They may be middle of the road, or maybe be the team that's doing just enough, but they're not going to be committed. They're not going to be excited. So ultimately their potential is limited. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the best thing you can do for your team to create high performing individuals, high performing teams, is to communicate what that looks like to you and to your team. And they may have some great ideas. If you sit down and you know, one of the simplest things you can do is just talk to your team and say, hey, this is what I want. I want a team of high performing individuals, high performing teams in my company. This is what high performing looks like to me. Have those conversations with them so that they can turn around and know what to expect and know how you're going to hold them accountable. We appreciate your time. I hope this helped you as a business leader kind of look at your team a different way and ultimately help you look at your organization through an employee-centric model.